Good Thursday afternoon. How is everyone? My name is John Dotson, and welcome to the Gruber Wired Hour. Along with us today,
Mark Schaffner. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sitting in for Mark Beach this afternoon. He is out sick today.
Yeah, he's not feeling too well, so we traded Mark for Mark.
So, well, hopefully I will be able to fill his shoes in this area.
I'm sure you will. Yeah, so, gosh, it's our 40th anniversary here at Gruber Industries.
Yeah.
40 years.
Pretty wild.
It is, considering, the stories I've heard of Pete, and when he started this out, starting in his living room. There was a picture, I couldn't find it, of him at his desk in his living room.
Oh, yeah.
On a whiteboard, and he was starting this business out. Who would have thought 40 years later we're here? Multiple companies, multiple employees. I mean, he's just growing this thing and continues to grow.
It is. It's been a good story and a good thing. I'm looking forward to the look back. I didn't bring the laptop because in 1984 there were no laptops.
No, we had paper, right? We wrote down our thoughts.
That's right.
So we're going to travel back to 1984 today and kind of revisit that era, that time period, and just take a refreshing look of, what was happening in the world at that point in time when Pete decided to go into business.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, we'll get there. I'll tell you what, 1984, I was 10 years old, living at home with mom and dad. I was born and raised up in Eugene, Oregon, in a suburb called Santa Clara. Okay. Now, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and just awesome. Love you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. We just came past that. But she was a great stay-at-home mother. My father worked in industrial sales, almost similar to what we do here, but working with valves, piping, fittings that help keep the logging industry going up in the mill works.
Sure, in Eugene, I would expect that.
Yeah. So, I remember I was about 10, I believe it was around 10 years old. My father came to me one day and says, "Hey, I have a project at work. We have some valves and we need to put some labels on, okay? And would you like to come to work and help us out? Give you a little bit extra spending money for the summer. You get to work with Dad." So I went into their office, went into their warehouse. He got me all set up, and we had this typewriter that was a machine press, right?
Okay.
And so we had to make these labels. And so you took each little letter of alphabet, and you'd have to input it into the drive shaft of where the shaft was in the keyboard. And then we had a puck. It looked similar to a dog tag that we put in there.
Okay.
And you'd sit there and you'd type out the label. I mean, it was this hard-driven type to make that punch just happen. And then we take these labels and we use rivets and adhere them to the side of these. It's just like a flow meter, a valve. That was a technology we had for making labels back then.
Wow.
And so days on end out in the hot warehouse, working away, typing these things and just drilling it in. And then you look at where we're at today and we have laser engraving.
Oh, yeah.
Different ways of being able to do this type of thing. So that was one of my memories of, type of industry. And I was a child. I was 10 years old at the time. So
one of my best memories of 1984, that was the year that I moved from Idaho to Alaska.
Okay.
So I was a little bit older. I was going to be a junior in high school. And I remember summer night, late August 1984, and woke up in the middle of the night. And, for us, our moving van was, we'd get a couple 100 miles a day, and going through British Columbia, and I woke up and the Northern Lights were up. And it was the first time I'd really seen them. And it was horizon to horizon. Even though there was no moon out, it was as light as daylight.
Amazing.
It was amazing. It was something that I had never seen before, and one of the most spectacular views of Northern Lights that I've ever seen.
Wow. Did you get a chance to see any of the Northern Lights from here in Arizona recently?
No, I didn't. I didn't. I'm getting old, man. I go to bed early.
I think, we took a look, but there was so much ambient light from the city that we really didn't, capture anything.
That's one of the things I heard. For here in Arizona, I heard that if you took your cell phone and put it on a tripod, pointed it up into a dark area of the sky, and put it on a timer, that you could get pictures of the Northern Lights, but they were pretty hard to see with the naked eye.
I've seen some of those. Mark, actually, who's not here with us and is ill, has some of those that he took.
Yeah, so that would have been cool.
Highlander, thank you very much for joining us again.
Yeah.
You know what? Thank you for these. Check this out, everyone. Highlander sent us some shirts. Kindness is always free. Oh, this is awesome.
Love it.
Yes.
Absolutely
so
love
true. So thank you, Highlander. We appreciate it. I know you're going to be coming on a show with the ladies tomorrow for Gruber Power. They're looking forward to that. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, when we have our 40th anniversary celebration, and maybe you want to tell them about this metal tube as well.
Yeah, we're having a 40th year celebration tomorrow. And one of the things that we're doing here at Gruber's Companies is making a time capsule. So Pete went out and got this time capsule. It's been engraved. So we are going to actually have a photo booth so everybody gets their picture taken. Those pictures will be placed inside the time capsule and is going to be placed. I'm not sure where he's going to bury it out here on property yet. I don't know if we've chosen a location or not.
I don't know. We've talked about a couple different locations. I'm not involved, so I don't know.
Yeah. So, but this will be opened up. What did we say it was? 4/4 of
40.
So
I think I'm going to speculate here, go out on a limb. I talked a little bit with Janie. 40, it's 40 years, so they decided 1940. That's where
sense.
the 40 came from. And I'm going to bet that they just got a thing about the fours.
That could very well be.
And so that's why they said 4/4, April 4th of 1940. I know a couple things that are going to go into the time capsule. A lot of people are going to be taking little photo pictures.
Sure.
We're going to take one of our handy dandy sunglass cases, though, and we're going to put it into the capsule. So I know that that's going to be in the time capsule. We also we have a safety bingo here.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And that's been a very effective way for us to stay safe as an organization. The most recent winner on that safety bingo, we went ahead and printed a copy of the winning sheet.
Oh, yeah.
And it was at 1,434 days. So we also took from our retired bingo balls, numbers 14 and 34.
Oh, nice.
And so that'll be that's going to be kind of a cool thing.
That is cool.
Who knows?
Very cool.
Maybe in 16 years when we open it, we'll still be going on our bingo.
Yeah, who knows? That'd be great, wouldn't it?
That would be something else.
So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate everyone's support on our show and those other shows as well that Gruber has offered: Gruber Power, Gruber Motors.
Yep.
Yeah. And now we're doing Gruber AI show. Is that true?
Oh yeah,
as well?
that's on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Now with Pete gone in Germany starting next week. I don't know, Jesse, what's going to happen with the AI show? Are you just going to have the AI version of Pete's voice instead of Pete?
I mean, we could do that. That's a good idea. I think we'll we'll hold off on that. The AI show actually just did what did we do? 30? No, we just hit a milestone, and today we hit a milestone on this one too. I think this is 30 for this show, episode 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Very cool.
But yeah, we'll be holding off while Pete's gone. I think he will be here for next Tuesday's shows, but then after that he's gone for 3 weeks.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So I'll be holding down the fort on the Gruber Motors podcast, and I'm not touching that AI stuff. I have enough to do. I have a job to do.
You got to work sometime, right?
So yes, can't play all the time, unfortunately.
So back to 1984. Jesse, Aaron, what about you guys? What were you doing in 1984? Crying?
Probably having my diaper changed.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Probably one.
I did not exist yet.
You had not existed yet.
I was about 5 years away.
Jesse was in the making. So, yeah, cool. Some statistics from 1984. I mean, let's start talking about what the landscape was like, what was the atmosphere, what was taking place at the time.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Talk about working. Everybody loves to work, right? We got to make money.
Sure.
Yeah. So wages back in 1984. Can you guys even guess?
Yeah.
What minimum wage was?
Yeah. What was minimum wage in 1984?
I'm going to go $4.10.
Okay. Jesse?
Minimum wage?
Yeah. 1984.
Wait, what did you say?
They said $4.10.
Let's say $2.50.
$2.50.
Oh yeah, I think we're way off on that one. Wait, isn't it?
Wow, I would have said who's closer, but honestly, they're the same distance. I think.
Yeah, it sounds
awfully
looks
close.
that way. Yeah.
Minimum wage $3.35 an hour, federal minimum wage, and I don't think the states had. Nowadays the states have all their different minimum wages.
Yeah.
That didn't exist then.
No. So the average salary yearly was right around 16,000 a year.
Yeah,
So-
I remember when I got out of college, I was extremely thrilled to have a $21,000 a year job.
Yeah. Wow. And then look where we're at today. Crazy, isn't it?
Yes.
Just yeah. I think we're about the same here with life expectancy. We took a look at that too.
Not too far different. I think it's gone up a little bit, 73.8 years for men and 79.7 for women. I think men is a little closer to women now.
I think so. Yeah. Came up a little bit there. But just some of the same things that kind of stayed. I mean, leading cause of death back then was still heart disease, cancer. I mean, nothing's really changed as far as that goes, medically speaking.
Right.
So
Right.
we still see some of the same resemblance there. Brief politics. Reagan was still president of the United States in 84.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. And, I had a friend who started his college presentation. Now, this was a couple of years later, but still.
Yeah.
And he said, I have AIDS.
Ah.
Now, granted, this was a friend that was going to Grand Canyon at the time college. So it was a Christian college, and AIDS at the time was known as the gay person disease.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, you could have heard a pin drop. He said, I have AIDS, and my AIDS actually helped me. He had hearing aids. That was so,
Yeah.
But yes, the AIDS epidemic was out there in 1984. It was still largely unknown, and it was thought to be a gay person's disease.
It was, but then through research and knowledge, as we all know, that necessarily wasn't the truth. And as it's developed today, now AIDS is a very controllable disease. We now have medicines that can control that.
Yeah.
Compared to what we had back then. But I do remember that being an issue as a child. Hey, wash your hands. Watch what you're touching. I mean, almost what we just went through with the pandemic.
Very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even multiple sclerosis. Nowadays, there are treatments that effectively keep the disease from progressing throughout the course of your life. And you live a long life and you pass away of natural causes with MS.
Oh, wow.
Back then, no, it was very frequent that people would die from MS at a fairly early age because there was no way to control the progression of the disease.
Yeah. And wow, if you stop and think about for 40 years of just the knowledge, research, education, where we've come through just in disease control alone since
amazing.
1984
It's amazing.
has been crazy. Let's see some economic trends. We are coming out of the late 70s of the downturn in inflation, and it started to settle out right around that 1984 era.
It did. I remember, I was really young, but I do remember the days of stagflation and President Peanuts, and he was replaced by Reagan, and then Reagan got shot, and everybody thought, oh, he's going to die, and he didn't. Big recession, and then 84 was the year where we were coming out of that recession. Things were starting to get better. You're probably a little young, but you may have remembered that in the lumber country, because Idaho was lumber country as well. Boy, that was particularly a hard hit industry during that recession. It was just starting to come back in 84.
Yeah, and then it wasn't far after that we had the spotted owl issue up there as well.
Oh, is that when that happened?
I think that was the same time period. I didn't look it up, but it's got to be somewhere around there where that became a huge issue. And just being, raised up there, you would see weird, spotted owls, people were just going nuts over.
Oh, yeah.
It was wild. It was just over and out, So getting into some more cultural type of things, can you go ahead and pull up picture number 3? We're going to go through these pretty quick here, Jesse.
I'm having an issue because I think all the images from last week are in here. So hold on one sec.
Okay.
Man, good movies.
Yeah, to really identify time periods, sometimes you have to take a look at the cultural entertainment aspect of it and what was taking place at that point in time, because it does give you more of a kind of snap picture of the thoughts and the time period pieces. But these were some of the top movies. The Karate Kid.
Yeah, wax on, wax off.
And still today, it's relevant. I don't know if you've seen the series updated that's out there.
I saw a little bit of it.
Yeah,
and it was a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of the shows and movies that have all the language and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but it looked like a good storyline, and wow, it was something else.
Yeah, and I remember my grandfather taking us to see this movie in the theater. And yeah. How about picture number 4? This one will resonate with a lot of people out there, just because we're talking about this stuff daily now with AI.
Yes.
This is still one of the threats people talk about.
The Terminator.
The Terminator.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
So Terminator, and then here's a fun one, number 5. Dancing was a big thing, and culturally there was a lot going on at that time period with music. Footloose.
Oh yes, everybody was 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
They were.
Do you realize that the track for Footloose, Hero, of course, Footloose itself. Most of the songs on that movie soundtrack ended up being hits between 1984 and 1986, and I'm talking number 1 hits on the Billboard chart for a long time.
Wow,
that's one of the all-time great soundtracks. I think.
Talk about Kevin Bacon. How far distant are you from him?
I'm sure I'm at least 6 degrees.
6 degrees? I'm just a couple, and I'll tell you why. My Uncle Pat. Okay. The movie Animal House was filmed up on the University of Oregon campus.
Okay.
My Uncle Pat was an extra. He was a trombone player in the parade in the front line when they turned the parade down and rammed his trombone into the brick wall.
Okay, yeah.
So, that's my separation from Kevin Bacon there.
Wow.
So,
pretty close. Yeah, you're only 2 degrees. That's pretty impressive.
Number 6. And then you have your imagination at this time period too. And I grew up with this particular movie, loved it. It's just never ending, right?
That's right. It sure is. And
that would be the never ending story is what we're referring to there. Not sure if you had a chance to see that show, but as a child, it was just a really fun show.
It was a little, young Atreyu and everything, and the
Luck Dragon.
The Luck Dragon, and I still think he wasn't a dragon; he was a dog with a long body.
Yeah.
But and of course, the song to that was a never-ending song to the never-ending story.
But just a really good, fun cultural show at the time. We're going to end up here with number 7. We were just talking about this earlier here. Ghostbusters.
Yeah, another classic.
There we go. Look at that. Ghostbusters. Yeah. This is just something that continues to just bring joy to a lot of people.
I remember seeing, this, I have to go forward about 4 years from that, going to the Metro Center Mall here in Phoenix. In the late 80s, I was in college, and somebody had tricked out their vehicle to look like the Ghostbusters car. And I mean, it was identical. It was so close. And but it was they called it the Ghost Blaster. So instead of all the equipment in the back, they had, I think it was 8 12-inch subwoofers.
Oh wow.
And so it would go, it'd drive around the parking lot, thump, thump, thump. It was pretty good.
So, Jesse, we're going to take a different turn here for a moment. You want to pull up that YouTube link for us?
Did all those movies come out in 84?
They did.
They did.
Whoa.
Every one of them.
That's got to be probably one of the best years for movies, right?
It was a great year. Not only that, but just also music in general. I mean, there was just so much going on. You had the top songs, When Doves Cry by Prince, What's Love Got to Do with It, Tina Turner. Let's see what else. Footloose by Kenny Loggins.
Yeah.
I think Metallica released Ride the Lightning, I think that same year too.
It could have very well been. Yeah, you had Van Halen with Jump at the time. Gosh, and while he's getting this set up, there was also some famous people born in 1984. Mark Zuckerberg, Katy Perry, Kelly Osbourne, Scarlett Johansson, LeBron James.
Yeah.
Born in 1984. And he's still in the league, right? So
He is. Oh, and this is possibly one of the most influential commercials ever.
Yeah.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the information purification directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology. resolve one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
The joke was every one of those guys sitting there staring at the screen was working on an IBM.
But what a statement to come out and be so bold. And this was actually released during the Super Bowl.
Yes.
You know, and just wow, you know, at that point in time, the video itself, just a dystopian, you know, atmosphere of it.
Well, and on top of that, Apple at the time was a small, struggling technology company that had products that were considered superior but not popular.
Mm.
And you know, the Apple II and the Apple II GS, G was graphics, S was sound. Those had been released recently, but they were kind of esoteric. That they weren't considered seriously. And this possibly the most iconic commercial of all time. Definitely the most iconic Super Bowl commercial of all time.
Yeah, it was, and you surprised me. Don't you know who directed that? Just by the film,
Steven Spielberg, I think,
no,
but I don't
Ridley
know.
Scott.
Oh, Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so that has that feel to it. But that was released, in the personal computer of Macintosh was released in 1984.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was.
just an advancement, an achievement all along. That was Bill Gates and Paul Allen, you know, that brought that all to a head and brought that out. That was actually was it Altair 8800 system that they were working on at the time?
Well, that's a little bit earlier than 84.
Okay.
Microsoft was trying to work with and get a deal with IBM for their personal computer. The Altair was the computer, and there was I don't remember the name of the gentleman. This is a little before my time, not a lot.
Yeah.
They had CP/M, which was a kind of a Unix flavored operating system, and they had the operating system that went with the Altair, and it was just called Disk Operating System. And Bill Gates went to the suits at IBM and said, "Yeah, we got something for you. We can do this, and we can do this cheaper. We can do this better, and we can. And our system is faster, and it's better than anything that you could get with CP/M." He convinced IBM to go with them, and then walked out of the meeting room, went to Paul Allen, and said, "Okay, where are we going to get a system? We have 60 days." Went to the creator of the Altair. I don't even remember his name right now. Bought the disk operating system from him, paid off the mortgage on his house. The guy was thrilled.
Wow, what a story.
And that became MS-DOS version 1.0, which IBM then relabeled to PC-DOS version 1.0.
Okay.
And by 1984, the 8086 computer, which was the 16-bit upgrade to the 8088, was just released. And the very first of the quote-unquote clones were starting to come out. Wow. It was something else.
Wow. What a time period. I mean, just there's so much going on there.
Yeah. In fact, Highlander says, "I checked into my nuclear submarine in 1984.
Oh, wow. We had nuclear submarines in 1984?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Harry McManus.
Yeah.
Great list of even more movies. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Police Academy, the original Dune, 2010.
2010,
which was the sequel to 2001,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good year.
There was just a year. I mean, they just had so much taking place and so much going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, we talk about the movies and stuff, but those movies and the music and everything helped drive technology. I mean, a change in what's going on in movie making then compared to now. Those are great movies at the time, but could you imagine if you had, you know, this technology at that time period? I mean, wow.
Yeah.
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 You know, nice transition for sure. Let's take a look at image number 9.
I really seriously considered getting one of these computers.
Did you? Yeah.
It was a later version of what this computer was. It's about to come out.
There we go.
That's a very young Michael Dell.
Yeah.
With his company at the time, PCs Limited, and the reason that I wanted the computer, it was cheap
Yeah.
compared to everything else out there. Oh my gosh. I ended up, I was going to college in 1987 through 89, and I was looking for a good computer, and the prices you could get online for these PC Limited computers were so good. They were absolutely changing the industry at the time.
Yeah, and what I've been reading about it was he was actually taking this particular system, and it was one of the first systems that you could, like I said, you're customize.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was able to take this more in a business format instead of general public, and take it to the business world and say, hey, we can customize this to fit your business model and your business needs at that particular point in time.
Yeah, it was really incredible. IBM had come out with their IBM PC, and then the PC XT, and so on and so forth. The first of the clones came out. The ones I worked on at my school were branded by a company called Corona, but it was what it was.
Yeah.
If you wanted a PC, you had to go and get it. And the fact that he said, "Well, how much memory do you want? We can put 640 kilobytes in there if you'd like. That's all that DOS could address.
Yeah.
Or we can go down to 256. You choose. I don't have to choose." That was amazing. Just that simple concept was so amazing.
Sure, we can personalize it. And he just brought you in and personalized it in that way.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Really cool stuff. Let's go to the next picture here. Let's see, number 10. And you were just speaking about some of these guys as well, IBM.
Oh, yes. In fact, they one of my instructors in college called them the Itty Bitty Machine Company.
Itty Bitty Machine Company. Look at that.
That looks like I'm thinking that might have been the IBM AT as opposed to the XT.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, you see that, I'm not going to point to it. There's that round key lock.
Yeah.
Very literally, you could lock your computer. When you locked your computer, you put your key in, you changed it from unlock to lock, you pulled it out, and it was locked and nobody could get into it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how you locked it back then.
That was how you locked your computer back then.
A hard locking system. What gets me about this is look at the cost of this in 1984.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're talking minimum wage around $3.25 an hour, give or take, and then something like this is going to set you back $3,000.
That is true, and that was somewhere between 2 and 3 months of wages for your typical person.
Yeah.
You go to today where fast food workers making $15 an hour, they're making $35,000 a year. This would be like about a $9,000 computer to them.
Yeah, wild. See, Pete himself chimed in here. While working out of the house in 1984 with 17 employees, our computer was DEC Rainbow Computer with a homebrew basic billing program that he personally wrote.
That's how you did it. The IBM computers had BASIC as well. It came with DOS, and the flavor that IBM had was called GW Basic. We like to call it the GWiz Basic.
GWiz.
Microsoft had Microsoft Basic. DEC had DEC Basic. They were very, very similar to one another.
Wow, and DOS, that's a whole something. I mean, you ask anyone nowadays, explain DOS,
DOS, it's simply, it was the operating system that your computer had. It was on a disk. That's why they call it disk operating system. The first version of DOS had 10 commands, such as dir to get a list of your directory, copy to copy files, del, ren to rename, del was delete, things like that.
Yeah.
And it was all type it in, and one screen at a time, man.
Wow.
Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
Let's go to photo number 11. This right here was produced by Radio Shack, or manufactured for Radio Shack, I should say.
And the funny thing is, whether it's Radio Shack or later they came out with a Tandy computer as well. People keep thinking that IBM was like the only thing out there.
No, there
were a lot of computers out
Yeah.
there. And it wasn't just IBM or Apple. I talked about Corona. Compaq was getting their start. PC Limited, which became Dell, was getting its start. Hewlett Packard, they were in the printers more, and then they were going to be going into computers soon. And gotta love that hard drive.
But this is one of the first transportable systems that you had. You can see the guy there in the little case.
Yeah.
And so this big, bulky. I mean,
what they don't tell you is that case weighed 60 pounds.
Yeah.
Pretty close.
But you wanted a laptop, this was as close you're going to get to it, right?
That's right. At
the time.
Hey, the fact that you could take that keyboard, latch it onto the front, make it, and it became a port that you could port it between two places. That itself was actually pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And then this is one of the but this is one where you had an introduction of hard disk models to coincide and along with it, so you could have more storage space.
Now, I want to expand on those hard drives just a little bit, because it says on there, new low price 12 megabyte hard disk forms a powerful system.
Yeah.
So the hard disk for models 16, 12, and 2, you got to remember, a single-sided floppy disk drive, and I think we're going to have a picture of one of those.
We are.
Come up, was 360 kilobytes. In fact, actually, the single-sided 5 1/4 floppy was 128 kilobytes. I'm sorry, 180 kilobytes. The double-sided was 360. They became eventually 1.2 or so megabytes. And then the 1.44 megabyte little plastic 3.5-inch drive came out. So if you had a hard drive that could hold 12 megabytes of information, it's like, holy cow, I can take the equivalent of like 40 floppy disks and put them onto one hard drive, and the hard drive is faster.
Yeah.
By a lot. So people were all over it. They thought it was great. Now you can whip out your phone and it has 512 gigabytes of information on it.
Yeah, exactly. See, Highlander says, I have AATXT system. The hard drive was a floppy B drive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Let's take a look at that floppy disk, number 12.
But I remember working with some of those little floppy disks. Oh my gosh.
You know, the worst part, because I was young, but I do remember those. We'd take them over, we put them into our laser. We had a laser 128 my parents bought, and we would stick that in there, and then it's like, oh, it's not loading. You flip open the tab, pull it back out, blow it off sometimes, put it back in.
Yep, absolutely. Blow it off.
But these are a relic that most people probably today, especially younger generations, go, what is this?
Well, Pete and I were talking on one of our podcasts not too long ago for Gruber Motors, and Pete said, yeah, one of his granddaughters came to him all excited with a 3.5-inch floppy and said, Papa, look, or Opa. I think that, and Pete can correct me if I'm probably getting it wrong, but she said something to the effect of, Opa, look, somebody 3D printed a save button. Isn't that cool?
That's funny. Wow. But yeah, this is how information was stored, right?
It is.
Yeah.
On the PC, it was these 180 or 320 kilobytes of data. And I also worked on a processor system that had the 80186, and it had the big floppy drives. And those were 8-inch floppy disks, and they held around 80 kilobytes.
Wow.
And it was a display writer. It was a fancy typewriter, basically.
Yeah.
And it had a little monitor, so you could actually see what it was that you were typing before you printed it on the paper. And ideally, what you did is you would type up your document, run the spell checker, and it would find your spelling errors, and you could then go back and fix them, and then you would never have spelling errors. course, I never ran the spell checker, so I always had errors.
So yeah, always had the errors there. Let me ask you, Mark, because I honestly don't know about the internal workings of these. Do you know how these disks actually work to store the data on them?
It was, yeah, I do. It was the floppy disk was the same type of magnetic. In this case, it was just vinyl, but it was a magnetic read-write head, and there would be a little opening at the bottom of the floppy disk where that read-write head would go. On a single-sided disk, you had a head just on the top. On a double-sided disk, you had a head on the top and bottom. The disks would spin fairly slow, maybe 100 RPM or less. We could find out, I'm sure. Whereas the hard drive could spin a couple thousand RPMs, and that's why the hard drives were so much faster. But the fact is, these things were surprisingly durable. It was, again, just a little vinyl film thing with a fiberglass. The inside of that black was a fiberglass material that would kind of help keep the diskette clean. And so it would help to, because you get a little bit of dust on them and stuff, and then all of a sudden you're getting read errors and you lose your stuff pretty quick.
Just so I can put this in my head, okay? You have how many of these disks full of information would you put on just a normal standard thumb drive that we have today?
Well, if 3 floppy disks was roughly a megabyte, 3 of your standard 360 kilobyte floppy disk was a megabyte, and you get it's 1,024 megabytes for a gigabyte, so that means you're up around 3,000 or so. We'll round in 1 gigabyte, and your typical SD card now is we'll say 64 gigabytes. So take 3,000 times 64. Now you're talking 18 plus another 1,200, so a little over 19,000 of these floppy disks can sit on a single 64 gigabyte thumb drive. And you take that 64 gigabyte thumb drive and so take that 19,000 times 8, because many phones today come as 512 gigabyte phones. So now instead of 30, I said 30,000.
Yeah.
Multiply by 8, you're about 240 to 250,000 floppy disks worth of information sitting on the smartphone that sits in your hand.
Wow. And that's just in 40 years of progress, right?
Yeah.
So can you imagine what's going to happen in the next 40 years? What type of leaps and bounds we can make? And is there an end to that? I mean, is there a top?
That's a good question. In the early 1970s, Intel founder Moore, and I don't remember his first name right offhand. I'd like to say Greg Moore, came up with what in the tech industry came to be known as Moore's Law, which was that things would progress. It was specifically about CPU speeds. The CPU speeds would roughly double around every 18 months. That's 40 years ago, and Moore's Law still is holding true today.
It's still pliable today.
It's still applicable today.
Wow.
And it has held largely true in terms of whether it's capacity for storage, or memory, or speed of processors or video. Moore's Law has proven to be in the electronics and computer industry largely a maximum that the industry is held to. At some point, we'll get to that point of diminishing returns where Moore's Law will not hold true. We're not there yet.
I beg to differ.
Really?
Quantum computing. Quantum computing is going to accelerate us very, very, very rapidly. But you're right. We're not there yet. We're on our way, though. Well on our way. But that's when instead of doubling the compute power every year, we 500,000x it every time we add a qubit to a board.
You're right, Jesse. I agree with you there. Once quantum computing becomes readily available, it's going to make honestly, it's going to make the computers that we have today compared to quantum computers look like the PC that you had on the screen from 1984 as compared to today.
It's going to make the most powerful supercomputers that exist right now currently look like prehistoric.
Yeah.
So almost obsolete. right?
Oh yeah.
Way beyond
mean,
obsolete.
Oh yeah.
Way beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
let's go
wild.
to that next one. I remember some of that next one too.
Oh, number 13.
Yeah, number 13.
This interested me when I looked it up because I was unaware
this
of
is
this.
15 here.
This is 15.
Yep, we need number 13. Should be Prodigy. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, it's in a different file format, so it opens separately.
So we didn't have the internet in 1984, and this was kind of the first precursor to that, correct?
It was while the internet itself did exist, it was still considered basically a data sharing format for universities. It was not open to the public yet. There was no World Wide Web yet. World Wide Web, what we think of as the internet, was not invented actually until 1991. And Prodigy and CompuServe and things like this, that was it. You would dial in and it was chat boards.
Wow. And who developed this? I want to say it was, we have it sitting right here, right?
Between IBM, Sears, and CBS.
Sears and CBS. So Sears had a stake in this because they wanted to sell some product along the road.
Oh, I'm sure
right?
they did. I'm sure they did. And what I like here is it was one of the first email systems.
Yeah.
It was a precursor to the kind of communication systems that was here. And so Highlanders asked me to talk about the IBM Enterprise Disk Pack. You know, Highlander, DASD storage, direct access. I don't remember what the S was on DASD storage. Direct access spinning disk or something like that is what it was. And the IBM Enterprise Disk Pack, that was more of a mainframe thing than it was a PC thing. But it was these disks, and Pete could chime in as well because DEC had something very, very similar. 150 megabytes or so, usually somewhere between 10 and as many as 20 spinning platters. And the platters were about so big around, sometimes larger. And
so they were 18 to 20 inches in diameter?
Yeah, but they were hard platters.
Okay.
They were hard platters. And the box that they sat in was could be as large as a clothes washer. Depending on how big the hard drive system was. But those kinds of things, you would submit a job to the mainframe. The mainframe would prioritize your work, and it would get the work done, and eventually would spit out the report that you needed to the printing device that you asked it to print to. And you would hope that you didn't have any programming errors in your job, because you'd be a couple hours before you'd find out that you had an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Because nothing was interactive.
No, not at all.
Nope,
just straight through.
You type in your program, and you can save your program. You could save it off, so you would be able to edit it instead of having to retype it from scratch every time. I was not early enough for punch cards, but I was early enough for some of this stuff.
Wow!
And that was the common form in 1984. And these mainframes could handle requests from hundreds of users at a time, so they were huge, especially in the financial industry, but business itself was getting really big into the IBM computers and enterprise disk packs and big stuff like that.
So
in 84.
What did the rooms look like then encase these and house these? I mean, are we talking they look like this data center type settings we have today?
Similar to, yes. Today we have, rows of 19-inch server racks with servers inside of them. If you've seen the UPS, you'd see a UPS that's one great big old cabinet with battery cabinets sitting next to it. That is more like what the mainframe would look like. One big cabinet, and you would have your random access storage, either in some storage or memory inside with the mainframe. More often, you would have thick, heavy cables that would go to external drive packs, and they would be in these cooled computer rooms. A lot of times they would have raised flooring on them as well.
Okay.
In fact, when Pete was in his 20s and working for DEC as a field engineer, it's one of the things that he started to do on the side. He would go into these computer rooms. He would have to lift up the floor to sometimes because he'd be diagnosing why a hard drive system wasn't working. And sometimes that involved taking and doing work on the cabling from the hard drive to the computer, lift up the floor, and he'd see all these dust bunnies and stuff that was caught, and it was the dirt and that would move around, cause static, and kill things. Among the other things that they would do. So he started a side business to clean up rooms, and eventually moved into raised floors, and then the real kicker was a printer switch.
A printer switch. Okay.
See, and it started with more of the mainframes, but really quickly was going to the PCs. A simple dot matrix printer would be $600. If you had a dot matrix printer for $600 and one of those newfangled Hewlett-Packard LaserJet printers, which were the personal size ones, were $1,200. The big ones were as much as $10,000.
Wow.
Nobody could afford for everyone to have printers, so you would share your printers, but you didn't have a server to share them with. You had a switch.
Okay.
So 2 different computers could have a printer cable connected in the back of the computer into a printer switch, and whoever needed the printer, you flip the switch to A or B or C.
I remember this.
And then you have one output from that printer switch that goes to the printer, and voila, you have a shared printer. Well, those printer switches were expensive, $250. Sometimes, depending on how many switches you had, it could be upwards of $300. And Pete learned, he had an electronics background, and he figured out that, gee, I could go to Radio Shack or could go and could source the parts for it. Found a company that would make a nice looking black plastic box, and for about $25 or $30 in less than an hour, he could have a printer switch put together. And then he would turn around and sell those printer switches for $150.
That little light bulb just went ping.
Oh yeah. That was some of the beginning. Between that and the computer room stuff, that really was the beginning of what was going on with Gruber Industries in 1984.
Wow. But just for him to realize that, oh, wow, look, this is dirty down here, and all this dust creates static electricity, which interferes with the magnetism that's going on around the cabling. I mean, all of that, just having a knowledge base to say, okay, something as simple as cleaning this up will resolve this issue.
Yeah.
And then realizing, you know what, I can do this. We can make a business out of this.
Yeah, and that's really where it started for him. Was he started by just going to the people that the companies that he was working with as a field engineer, and offering these additional services that Digital Equipment wasn't interested in offering. Pretty soon he was busy enough that he's like, I think I could probably do better all by myself than I can working for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the start.
And 40 years later, look where we're at.
And 40 years later, yeah.
And it gets to me, though, and it's just so cool. Still the same philosophy works today.
It does.
Out of everything that Pete has done to grow this business, that philosophy has still been instilled throughout.
It does. It's ultimately, you're finding a need.
Mm-hmm.
You're figuring out is anyone else out there fulfilling that need. You understand that nobody else is, or there are fewer people fulfilling the need than there is of need.
Yeah, for demand.
Demand. And so you go in. And as you go in and grow your business, you just spend less than you make, and you're good, and you succeed. It's not the fastest growth method, but it works. And we're here 40 years later as a result.
And 40 years later, he's still opening new business.
Oh, yeah.
What's next business coming up that we're opening up?
EV Preserve is the next business that we're coming and opening up. And it is exactly that reason. We're taking one of the needs that's out there in the electric car market is for people who want to be able to store and preserve their Roadster or other electric vehicle. The challenge that they're finding, the problem that they're facing, is that these car storage places don't know how to deal with an electric vehicle. Just this week, we had a car come in from a storage facility, and the way the story goes here is that somebody from the storage facility called us and said, "Hey, the battery's dead on this Roadster. I need to have you quote me for a 12-volt battery because it won't turn on, it won't start." And the problem was, they gave us the VIN number. We said, "Well, that's a version 1.5 Roadster. It doesn't have a 12-volt battery."
Mm.
And the guy's like, "No, the lights won't come on. It won't start." Yeah, there literally is a DC to DC converter between the main high voltage battery and this. When was the last time you charged it? Oh, I don't know. And so, but it's, that's what was going on. And so we're doing work to try to save these Roadsters. And we have seen that we've not been able to find anybody yet who specializes in storing electric vehicles and making sure that they're taken care of while they're in storage.
Oh, so nice. So identifying that this issue was out there and then being able to come up with a responsible, answer to resolve that for the public. Yeah.
It's
really cool.
We believe there's demand and there's no supply yet. So Pete comments on this. He says, "The best find under an access floor, which was also used as plenum to distribute cooled air, was a 12-pack hidden by the computer operators." That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pete, how long did it take you to finish that 12-pack?
Highlander, you're killing me, Pete. We weren't allowed to have alcohol in the submarine.
Well, that's Highlander. That's why you guys snuck it in and hid it underneath the flooring there.
So,
right?
Pete brought up another big problem with the dust. The problem with the dust was the disk platters were not yet in sealed Winchester hard drives.
Oh.
That's right. More than the static electricity, these hard drives were not hermetically sealed.
Okay.
So dust could get up into the air, and the idea would be, if this is a read platter,
okay,
if this table is your hard drive, if the time capsule is a piece of dust, the read platter sits down here, the read head. So you have this little tiny space between the read head.
Mm-hmm.
That piece of dust gets in the way, and it throws that read head off. In fact, a lot of times the dust was heavy enough, that speck of dust was heavy enough to cause that read head to bounce against the platter, which would permanently damage it. Either the read head, the platter, or both. And when you're talking about hundreds of dollars per megabyte of storage space, that was an expensive problem.
Yeah. Wow. Or just like getting a little bit of dust on your record player, scratching that disc.
Shall we get to the next one?
Yeah, we only got a few moments left, so we'll kind of pick and choose here. Let's go with number 14, because we all have cell phones nowadays. In 1984, they released some of the first cell phones. Here we go. Like I said, almost no one had one. They were huge and cost like $4,000. Today's terms, $9,000. Look at that thing.
Growing up, my dad was the assistant fire chief at the volunteer fire department. 911 did not exist.
Look at this.
And
we have one here in house.
That's technically that's Pete's current cell phone right now.
That actually works.
Oh yes, this one's a Motorola specialty.
Nice.
We had my dad had a car phone, and this was before 1984 in this case. And the phone number 911 had been proposed, was not out there, but when people needed to call for fire service, his phone number would ring as one of the phones that would ring, and he would pick up and drive where the fire was at with the volunteer fire department. It was about $3 a minute.
Wow.
For airtime. And this is at a time, remember, when the minimum wage was $3.35
an hour.
Yeah. So 1 minute of airtime was 1 hour's worth of wages.
You can't fathom that.
Wow.
The way we use these today. My father had one of these, but it was in the brick case. Remember, it had the battery in the zip up leather case.
Oh, yes.
And he had carried around with him, and it must have been, I mean, really good size.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of just like, wow. Number 15. There we go. I personally never had one of these, but I'm sure you did.
And especially when I had my first job out of high school.
Yeah.
You never had a beeper?
Nope, never had a beeper.
I did in my first job out of high school. I still remember I was a delivery driver for a paint store, and if they needed something, they would beep you, and then you were to stop where you were at or wherever your next stop was and call back. And,
yeah.
What's up? What's going on? What do you need?
Yeah, I remember these. I remember my father had one of these too, and he always had rolled coins in the car. You know, because at that time you still had to stop and find a payphone in most instances.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, is a relic of the past as well. So,
hey, can we jump down to number 17?
Yeah,
since
you're excited
we're
about
short?
number 17.
Yeah, I am a little bit actually.
Gaming was a lot different back then.
It sure was. I didn't spend much time in an arcade.
No.
Well, I grew up in a fairly conservative area of the country. You know, the first, in fact, I'll tell you, the first African American person I saw live, I was an 8th grader in junior high. That was just, it was the area of the country I was in. That's just is what it is. One of the people that I knew, a friend of the family, looked at an arcade, and we had an arcade that had been set up in our small town, and they kind of looked sideways over it like that. It says, I better not ever catch you in that den of perdition. It's like, what? Pac-Man's fun.
Yeah, what's wrong with Pac-Man? I still play Pac-Man today. We have it for the PS4 at home.
Oh, great. That's
Galaga,
awesome.
Pac-Man, all those games. But really, gaming was a thing. It was an adventure. You had to go out to these arcades in most instances. You know, it was just a big social event.
It was. And, you know, because by 1984, they were beyond asteroids and space invaders, and they had gotten into Mario and Pac-Man, and it was really starting to blossom.
In
at that
fact,
point.
there's now specialized bars. We have one here in town, Cobra Arcade. And you go down, it's downtown, I think on 2nd Avenue or something like that. But it's just all the old nostalgic arcade games. So you can go down there, have a drink, and pop your quarters in, and you can just go through and play them
regular
all.
ones too, Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, that's more
go there
modernized.
and it's just a giant room full of video games and people drinking.
Yeah. So
what was the name of the arcade?
I want to say it's Cobra.
Cobra?
Yeah, if you look it up. I've been there a couple times now just to check it out, and like I said, all the nostalgic old games, and just a fun place to go and hang out.
You know, of Dave and Buster's, my nephew was like, yeah, Dave and Buster's is the coolest place. It's like all these arcade games and stuff, but it's adults.
Yeah.
And we took one look at him and said, what do you mean, adult games?
I don't know if you've ever been to Castles and Coasters.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If you go into the main floor there, down below, they have all these pinball machines. So if you like playing the old nostalgic pinball, it's just a lot of fun to go play there as well.
Oh, man. I haven't been there in a long time, because when I was last there, much younger, but it was all arcade games down there.
Yeah.
Wait, now, is that still there? Or are they getting rid of it during the remodel?
No, that's staying in place.
It's staying there?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's going to stay there. So is the Walmart that's there in a storage facility. The rest of it is coming out to revamp the whole Metro Center area.
Crazy, man.
I know. Just like that, we're coming towards the end of our show.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, that was a fun hour, John. Thank you for inviting me to come.
Oh,
do
you're
this.
welcome. Thank you for joining us. 1984, and the historic moment for us is that's when Pete decided to go into business.
You know, if I remember right, the actual date was somewhere around March 25th of 1984 when Gruber Industries was incorporated. So, hey, a couple of things here, just as we leave. Highlander, he says, on the submarine, the alcohol is called cough syrup. 40 proof.
40 proof cough syrup. I'll take you up on some of that.
I don't know if I want the members of a nuclear submarine drinking at all. I'm just going to say that.
True.
Yeah,
This next one's great, though.
Yeah. And he says, open up that wallet, Pete. Let the moths fly out. Do like the Highlander. Buy a new phone.
Pete's laughing.
Peace is laughing.
Jesse, what videos do we have coming up?
So we're kind of back on what I was touching on quantum computing. Pete and I shot a video today that is about Moore's Law, actually.
Okay.
And that was the basis for it, of how that concept, really what it was for was how many transistors you could fit, I think, on like a board or something, and how that doubled every year.
Yeah, every 18 months.
Yeah, every 18 months, something like that. So that concept, like you were saying earlier, gets applied to all other industries and how things increase year over year, basically. And we are doing a video on the exponentiality of technology. And so we're talking artificial intelligence, neural networks, nuclear fusion, and quantum computing, and how those things are going to take us from this kind of trajectory that we've been on and then just skyrocket us very, very, very quickly.
I'm looking forward to
Wow.
hearing that and
I
seeing
mean-
that video. That's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So good stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
Pete and I will be here next Tuesday, but tomorrow Highlander joins Janie and Nicole on
That's
the
right.
on the Power Hour, and then next Wednesday will be hiatus. You and Mark will be back next Thursday.
Yeah, we'll be
though,
back
right?
next Thursday. So once again, please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy all of our podcasting that we do here and all of our videos across all the platforms. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm John Dotson.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Take care.